Good afternoon, everyone. Dear students, today we will be reading Birth, written by A.J. Cronin. This is chapter 7 from our book Snapshots. And, as usual, let's first meet the author. Archibald Joseph Cronin, professionally known as A.J. Cronin, was born in 1896. He was a Scottish physician, novelist, dramatist, and non-fiction writer who was one of the most renowned storytellers of the 20th century. He entered Glasgow University to study medicine, but his studies were interrupted by the First World War, and later on he finished his studies, worked in several hospitals, and moved to London to start a practice there. His best-known works are The Citadel and The Keys of the Kingdom, both of which were made into Oscar-nominated films. The chapter that we are going to read today is an extract from The Citadel, his best-known novel, which was groundbreaking in its treatment of the theme of medical ethics. The story has few main characters. First one is Dr. Andrew Manson. He is a young medical graduate working in a small mining town. On the call of Joe Morgan, a miner, he manages to help in a difficult birth and saves the baby's life due to his knowledge and efforts. Joe Morgan is the miner, a husband of Susan Morgan. He calls Dr. Andrew Manson to help them. And he has full faith in the doctor. Another character is Susan Morgan's mother and the midwife. So Dr. Andrew Manson has just begun his medical practice in a small Welsh mining town of Blenheim. When he returns from a terrible evening with his girlfriend Christine, he meets Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan approaches Dr. Andrew Manson to help in the delivery of his wife. Dr. Andrew Manson has to put in much labor in the delivery, as the mother requires much attention before she is revived. Further, the baby was not breathing at birth, so using all his knowledge and intuition, Dr. Andrew Manson makes more efforts to revive the child. After almost half an hour of frantic efforts, he succeeds and comes away with a sense of achievement. In this excerpt from The Citadel, Andrew Manson, newly out of medical school, has just begun his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in the small Welsh mining town of Blenheim. As he is returning from a disappointing evening with Christine, the girl he loves, he is met by Joe Morgan. Joe and his wife, who have been married nearly 20 years, are expecting their first child. Excerpt means part or extract, so this is an extract from The Citadel, one of A.J. Cronin's best-known works. So Andrew Manson, one of the main characters, is newly out of medical school, and he has just begun his medical practice. Medical practice means he just started to work as a doctor. So he has just begun his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in the small Welsh mining town of Blenheim. Welsh means in Wales. Mining town refers to a mining community, a place that houses miners. Mining communities are usually greater around a mine or a quarry. We know that mining means a process of obtaining coal or other minerals from a mine. As he is returning from a disappointing evening with Christine, disappointing evening means he's feeling sad or displeased, unhappy, because something was not as good as expected, or because something did not happen. Christine is the girl he loves. So as he is returning from this disappointing evening with Christine, he is met by Joe Morgan. Joe and his wife have been married for nearly 20 years and they are expecting their first child. Though it was nearly midnight when Andrew reached Brangover, he found Joe Morgan waiting for him, walking up and down with short steps between the closed surgery and the entrance to the house. At the sight of him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. Although it was very late, it was nearly midnight, when Dr. Andrew reached Brangover, he found John Morgan waiting for him. John Morgan was walking up and down with short steps between the closed surgery means operating room, and the entrance to the house. At the sight of him means the moment he saw him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. Burly means large, strong. It means heavily built. And driller refers to someone who uses a drill machine. His face, John Morgan's face, expressed relief. We know that Joe Morgan was a miner. His face expressed relief. His face showed relief. It means the feeling of happiness or easiness that comes when something happens or doesn't happen. He was happy to see the doctor. Doctor, I'm glad to see you. I've been back and forward here this last hour. The missus wants ya, before time too. So Joe Morgan tells the doctor, Hey doctor, I'm glad to see you. I'm happy to see you. I've been back and forward here this last hour. Back and forward means to and fro. He was moving in one direction and then the opposite, so not making progress in either. He was walking left and right for the past 1 hour. And he says, the missus wants ya, before time too. This is an early delivery. The missus means wife, informal. The missus, the wife, wants ya. Ya means you, and that also before time. Andrew, abruptly recalled from the contemplation of his own affairs, told Morgan to wait. Andrew was still thinking about Christine, and he was suddenly interrupted. Abruptly means suddenly or unexpected. To recall means to remember or recollect, to bring back into one's mind. He recollected from the contemplation. Contemplation refers to some thoughtful observation, a state of awareness. He was recalled from this contemplation of his own affairs, of his own matters. Affairs means happening or incident or event. He was thinking about Christine and now he was suddenly interrupted. He told Morgan to wait. He went into the house for his bag. Then together they set out for number 12 Blaina Terrace. The night air was cool and deep with quiet mystery. Usually so perceptive, Andrew now felt dull and listless. He had no premonition that this night call would prove unusual, still less that it would influence his whole future in Blinley. So after being suddenly remembered of what is happening, the doctor went into the house for his bag. Then together they set out. To set out means to start. To start out. They went to number 12, Blaina Terrace. The night air was cool and deep, with quiet mystery. Quiet mystery, mystery as in secrecy. Usually so perceptive, perceptive referring to insightful or energetic, responsive. Usually he was very responsive and perceptive, but Andrew now felt dull. Dull means not clear, not having any zest or keenness. He felt dull and listless. Listless means lethargic, lacking energy or enthusiasm. He had no premonition. Premonition refers to idea or a strong feeling that something is going to happen. Intuition. So he had no premonition that this night call would prove unusual. He had no idea that this night call would be very unusual. Still less that it would influence his whole future in Blenheim. He didn't know, he had no clue that this night call would change his future in Blenheim. The two men walked in silence until they reached the door of number 12. Then Joe drew up short. They walked in silence and then they reached the door of number 12. Then Joe drew up short. To draw oneself up short means to stop, to bring or come to a halt suddenly, or to bring oneself up. He suddenly stopped. "I'll not come in," he said. And his voice showed signs of strain. "But man, I know you'll do well for us." So now Joe is afraid. He says he will not come in. His voice showed signs of strain. Strain means some tension or tiredness, some effort. And he said, "But man, I know you'll do well for us. I know you will take care of it." Inside, a narrow stair led up to a small bedroom, clean but poorly furnished, and lit only by an oil lamp. Here Mrs. Morgan's mother, a tall, grey-haired woman of nearly 70, and the stout, elderly midwife waited beside the patient, watching Andrew's expression as he moved about the room. So after reaching their place, the doctor meets two more characters. One is Mrs. Morgan's mother, and the other one is a midwife. Mrs. Morgan's mother, Susan Morgan's mother, is tall, grey-haired woman who is concerned about her daughter's happiness, and the midwife will be pessimistic about the child survivor, and we will read about this in a moment. So inside, a narrow stair. Stair means a set of stairs. This stair was leading up to a small bedroom where Mrs. Morgan was about to deliver. It was clean but poorly furnished. It means there was hardly any furniture, and lit only by an oil lamp. There was an oil lamp and nothing else. Here, Mrs. Morgan's mother, a tall, grey-haired woman of nearly 70, and a stout, elderly midwife. Stout means strongly built, physically strong. Midwife refers to a person who is trained to assist women in childbirth. This elderly midwife waited next to the patient, and she was watching the doctor's expressions as he moved about the room. So as he moved around the room, the midwife was watching his expressions. Expressions meaning the action of making known one's thoughts or feelings. He was looking at the doctor. "Let me make you a cup of tea, Dr. Bach," said the former quickly after a few moments. Bach means dear. "Let me make you a cup of tea, doctor, dear," said the former quickly. The former means denoting the first of two which are mentioned. So, Mrs. Morgan and midwife. Mrs. Morgan was offering the tea. She was the former. Andrew smiled faintly. He saw that the old woman, wise in experience, realized there must be a period of waiting, that she was afraid he would leave the case, saying he would return later. This is what Andrew understood. The doctor smiled faintly. Faintly means hardly. He smiled in a faint manner, indistinctly. He saw that the old woman referring to Mrs. Morgan's mother, she was wise in experience, and he realized that she must have thought that there must be some period of waiting as a normal procedure. And he also had a feeling that she was afraid that he would leave the case. He would leave them there, saying that he would return later. Leave the case means he will not stay till the delivery was completed. "Don't fret, mother. I'll not run away," the doctor says. Fret means worry. The doctor tells her, "Don't worry, mother. I'll not run away." Even without saying anything, he understood that she had a feeling he would just leave the case. He would go away and say that he will return later. Down in the kitchen, he drank the tea which she gave him. Overwrought as he was, he knew he could not snatch even an hour's sleep if he went home. He knew, too, that the case here would demand all his attention. A queer lethargy of spirit came upon him. He decided to remain until everything was over. This is what the doctor did. Down in the kitchen, he drank the tea which Mrs. Morgan's mother gave him. Overwrought as he was, overwrought means very tired. He knew that he could not snatch even an hour's sleep if he went home. He knew that even if he was to go home, he would not be able to sleep. He would not be able to catch even an hour's sleep. So he decided to stay. He knew that the case here would demand all his attention. To demand means to request. This case would need all his attention. A queer lethargy of spirit. Queer means strange or odd, and lethargy is a condition or state of being lethargic. Lethargy causes you to feel sleepy or sluggish. Lethargy of spirit means lack of enthusiasm. Lack of enthusiasm came upon him, so he decided to remain until everything was over. An hour later, he went upstairs again, noted the progress made, came down once more, sat by the kitchen fire. It was still, except for the rustle of a cinder in the grate and the slow tick-tock of the wall clock. No, there was another sound, the beat of Morgan's footsteps as he paced in the street outside. The old woman opposite him sat in her black dress, quite motionless, her eyes strangely alive and wise, probing, never leaving his face. So, 1 hour later, the doctor came upstairs. He went upstairs again. He noted the progress made. He was noting, is there any progress? Then he came down once more and sat by the kitchen fire. He says it was still, except for the rustle of a cinder. A rustle means a soft, cracking sound, a swishing, as in movement of dry leaves or paper. It was still except for this noise, for this rustle of a cinder. Cinder means burnt piece of coal, embers, or wood that has stopped giving off flames but still has some combustible matter in it. And this was making sound in the grate, in the fireplace. And he also heard the slow tick-tock of the wall clock. We know very well when we are waiting for something or when there is some situation, we can hear the sounds like the sound that a clock makes and so on. But there was another sound here, the beat of Morgan's footsteps. Beat means sound, hit or strike. The doctor could hear John Morgan's footsteps. Joe Morgan is waiting outside. We remember he didn't want to come inside, and his wife is delivering. The doctor could hear the beat of Morgan's footsteps as he paced in the street outside. To pace means to walk back and forth across the same space again and again, especially because one is nervous. The old woman opposite him sat in her black dress, quite motionless. Motionless means she was not moving, and her eyes strangely alive and wise. Probing. Probing means searching or inquiring closely into something, never leaving his face. She kept looking at him. His thoughts were heavy, muddled. The episode he had witnessed at Cardiff Station still obsessed him morbidly. His refers to the doctor. The doctor's thoughts were heavy, muddled. Muddled means mixed up, not arranged in order. He was confused. He was thinking about Christine and the episode, the unpleasant episode they had. The episode he had witnessed at Cardiff Station still obsessed him morbidly. Obsessed him morbidly. To obsess means to dominate someone's thinking. Obsessed means preoccupied or haunted by something like an idea. Obsessed him morbidly means it obsessed him, it haunted him negatively. He was still thinking about it. He thought of Bramwell, foolishly devoted to a woman who deceived him sordidly, of Edward Page, bound to the shrewish bloodwen, of Denny, living unhappily apart from his wife. The doctor was thinking of Bramwell, foolishly devoted to a woman who deceived him sordidly. Devoted means focused on something exclusively. So he's thinking about Bramwell. Foolishly devoted means foolishly focused on a woman who deceived him. To deceive means to deliberately cause someone to believe something that is not true. To deceive means to trick or cheat or defraud. This woman deceived him sordidly. Sordidly means unpleasantly, or in a morally wrong and shocking way. He was also thinking about Edward Page. He was an assistant to Dr. Edward Page. Bound to the shrewish bloodwen. Bound means tied. Tied to a shrewish, quarrelsome. Shrewish means bad-tempered or aggressively assertive. He was thinking of Denny, living unhappily apart from his wife, away from his wife. His reason told him that all these marriages were dismal failures. So this is what he was thinking about. He was thinking about all these people, and he was thinking about marriages. And his reason told him that all these marriages were dismal failures. Dismal means disappointing. Disappointing failures. It was a conclusion which, in his present state, made him wince. So the doctor is still thinking about this unpleasant experience, unpleasant event that he had with Christine. And then he's thinking about the marriages. And his thoughts are that all these marriages that he was thinking about were disappointing failures. This was the conclusion that he had. Conclusion means the end or the result. This was the conclusion which in his present state made him wince. Wince means to feel pain. Wince also means to pull a face, to make a face, some shrinking movement of the body out of pain and distress. So he was feeling pain. It made him wince. He was feeling odd. This conclusion that all these marriages were total failures made him sad. He was feeling pain. He wished to consider marriage as an idyllic state. Yes, he could not otherwise consider it with the image of Christine before him. He wished to consider, to think about marriage as a perfect state, idyllic state. Yes, otherwise he could not think of it with the image of Christine before him. What this means is that he cannot think about marriage and have Christine's image in front of his eyes. Her eyes, shining towards him, admitted no other conclusion. He says that her eyes, Christine's eyes, which were shining towards him, admitted no other conclusion. Her eyes were also telling this only. It was the conflict between his level, doubting mind and his overflowing heart which left him resentful and confused. It was the conflict between his level, doubting mind. He says that this was a conflict between his level, doubting mind. Level, doubting mind refers to reasonably doubtful. He was very much doubtful, and his overflowing heart which left him resentful and confused. This was the conflict. On one side there was his level doubting mind. Level doubting mind meaning reasonably doubting mind on one hand and overflowing heart on the other. Overflowing means full of emotions because he still cared about Christine, and this all left him resentful and confused. Resentful means aggrieved or irritated, feeling or expressing bitterness or for having been treated unfairly. That is why he is feeling resentful. He feels that Christine did not treat him good or fairly. He let his chin sink upon his chest, stretched out his legs, stared broodingly into the fire. He let his chin sink upon his chest. It means his head was down. His head was hanging low. He stretched out his legs and he stared broodingly. Broodingly means worryingly, deeply or seriously thoughtful. He kept staring into the fire. He remained like this so long, and his thoughts were so filled with Christine that he started when the old woman opposite suddenly addressed him. At this moment he is thinking about Christine. His thoughts were so filled with Christine that he started when the old woman opposite suddenly addressed him. He started his work only when the woman opposite, who was sitting the opposite, when she suddenly addressed him, when she suddenly spoke to him. Her meditation had pursued a different course. Her meditation means her contemplation, thinking, had pursued a different course. It means it followed a different line of thought. This lady was thinking about something, and the doctor was thinking about something completely else. So the doctor will start with his work after the old lady addresses him. Dear students, this will be all for today. We will continue next time. Have a nice day and see you soon.